Welcome back. The release of the 5-year intergenerational report by the Treasurer was meant to start a conversation about issues around Australia's growth and wealth, particularly as the population ages and we live longer. But it was somewhat overwhelmed, firstly by the Treasurer being in court fighting Fairfax Media on defamation, then by Tony Abbott managing to put offside his closest Indigenous advisors by claiming that Aboriginal people who live in remote communities make a lifestyle choice doing that taxpayers can't endlessly fund. And then Christopher Pyne's actions on higher education changes in the past 2 days, where he has brightly claimed today that he's a fixer and he's fixed it. Kelly O'Dwyer is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasurer, and she joins me now from our Canberra studio. Kelly O'Dwyer, thanks very much for being there.
Great pleasure, Helen.
Now, you've got a smile on your face, but it has been a day of backflips by Education Minister Pyne. For a government that promised no surprises, he said today there'll be a surprise in the budget as to how he's going to pay for the $150 million in continued research funding. So how is the budget going to pay for that?
Well, the terrible truth here is that the Labor Party, with the research funding, decided that they wouldn't fund research, the increase research beyond June 2015. Now, this has not been noted, I think, in a lot of the coverage here, but it was completely unfunded. So there were no solutions by Labor. What the Minister came up with was an idea as to how it could be funded, and he said it could be funded through the package that was being delivered that would deregulate universities, increase action and increase competition and opportunity for people who wanted to get a higher education. He put that package to the Senate. He's been negotiating that package with the crossbenchers again because the Labor Party refused to negotiate on this bill.
Right, but yesterday he did threaten those jobs, and then today he backed down from that. How is the budget going to pay for that $150 million to continue it?
Well, he's acknowledged that more savings will have to be found in the budget in order to pay for those research positions. Now, look, this is the unfortunate truth of budgets: is if you spend more in one area, you have to find savings in another area. The Labor Party don't seem to understand this. They seem to think that there's some magic money tree. They seem to think that government money is somehow completely detached from individual taxpayers whose earned money, hard-earned money, is appropriated by the government in order to fund the services that we expect and the services that are currently paid for out of the budget and out of appropriations. So we've said we're not going to be irresponsible, we're not going to be reckless like the Labor Party. We're going to make sure that we have funded proposals that are brought forward. That's what we've done here. We don't want to jeopardise the university higher education reform. We know that university higher education reform is critical. Peter Beattie, somebody who is not normally on the same page as Minister Christopher Pyne, even remarked today and in previous days that it would be dumb not to pass this package of reforms.
All right, fair point, but would you agree it was a backflip of pretty spectacular proportions? The Senate will now vote on fee deregulation or not, but the government will put off debating the 20% uni course funding cuts, so you don't get the cuts in spending that you wanted for the budget.
Well, look, the Labor Party, of course, to the higher education sector made cuts of more than $6 billion.
Sorry, Kelly, if you could just stick to this issue that's happened today that is a back down from your side of politics. The Minister has put off the 20% funding course cuts that the budget was going to be able to save.
Well, certainly that's a fact, and we're going to need to find further savings. It's not helped by the fact that we don't have political partners in the Labor Party that are also keen to make sure that we are not putting that funding burden onto future generations. You mentioned the intergenerational report before. The intergenerational report was the perfect example of just how reckless the Labor Party was with future generations, our children and our children's children, who are going to be funding our lifestyles of today and also their own services and their own infrastructure needs. This is not something that we can stand for. It's something that we have said that we will get under control. We're not going to accept that net debt should go to 122% of GDP by 2054, which was what the Labor Party had us on track to do, which is only just below Greece really at 171%. We've halved that. We've halved that with the legislated changes that we've put in place. But you're right, Helen, there is more work to do, and we just hope that instead of political pygmies on the other side of the chamber, we've actually got serious partners.
All right, we're talking about the Intergen report, but in a sense the suggestion by the Treasurer that perhaps younger people could dip into their super savings for a house deposit or for retraining took off as the most discussed issue. He put it because we're going to be living much longer. That was roundly criticised by former Treasurer Peter Costello, by Finance System Inquiry Head David Murray and others as a recipe for depleting retirement savings, putting greater pressure on down the track on pensions. Do you accept that?
Look, I think that the key point in all of this, Helen, is that we actually need to have a discussion about superannuation. And I think every single one of those people you mentioned says that this is a conversation we need to have. It's a conversation we need to have in light of the evidence that was brought forward by the intergenerational report. The intergenerational report was very clear. It said that currently, under our system right now, 70% of people who are aged over 65 are on a pension or a part pension. That will only go down by about 3% to 67% by 2054, despite the fact that we will have another 40 years of superannuation savings. Now, we need to ask ourselves the question, is superannuation working to deliver the retirement incomes that will support people in their retirement? And it should be looked at from time to time, and that's what we're going to do.
The one move that did win the Treasurer some brownie points was cracking down on foreign purchases of existing houses if the buyers are not resident in Australia and he's forcing the sale, or FIRB is forcing the sale. Now, are all those foreign buyers, you've looked into this, are they trying to get around existing laws if they use local shelf companies or trust structures but they don't actually live here?
Anybody who is trying to disguise that they are a non-resident foreign investor when purchasing existing homes is trying to flout our foreign investment framework.
And do you have evidence that they are doing that in large numbers?
Well, part of the problem with the review that was conducted last year by the House Standing Committee on Economics is that there is a paucity of data. That one of the key recommendations made was that we need to have a national register so that we can have a discussion informed by fact rather than a discussion informed by anecdote. But what we do know is that there have been increased levels of foreign investment. They have in effect doubled in recent times, and that during that time we have not seen divestments ordered as we have seen in the past for people who have been flouting the laws. Now, the Foreign Investment Review Board said at the time that's because everybody was being far more compliant. I think that defies credibility. The Treasurer thinks that defies credibility, and the government has acted.
All right, would you agree on another issue, because the budget is less than 8 weeks away? There have been many mixed messages from your government. The Treasurer admitted biting off more than could be chewed in the last budget, but he and the Prime Minister are also saying the government says that it wants to stick to its spending cuts and to do budget repair. Well, which is it? Is the electorate getting mixed messages here?
Well, we do need to commit to budget repair. That is the only sustainable solution for our budget and for the future prosperity of our nation. As I said before, there's no money tree, it's taxpayers, and currently 70% of the revenue that is derived currently at the moment is derived from people who are paying income tax. Now, 1/6 of those people paying income tax pay about 2/3 of all of those taxes. And if we are talking about increasing their burden even further, as Labor is suggesting that they do, we're talking about people who are only $4,000 a year off the average salary. Now, this is not something that is sustainable, and this is something that Labor need to be honest about when they're talking about increasing taxes.
All right,
we
so
know that we are going...
I was just going to say, would you describe the upcoming budget then? Will it be tough on spending or a more softly approach? In about 10 words or less.
Well, we're going to stick to our plan to reduce spending. We're going to make sure that that is done in a fair and sustainable manner. We're going to make sure that we fund those things that need to be funded, that people expect, and we're going to bring our budget back under control. All
right, Kelly O'Dwyer, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Helen.
Our political panel is next, Peter Beattie and Helen Coonan, so stay with us.